first of all, thank you for organizing this. So I'm going to give you an idea of what we are discussing in our paper, which is reuse by design, a pivot-based architecture for the KIParla corpus. And in order to do this, of course, I have to introduce you to the original dataset, which is the KIParla corpus. And Caterina, who is here today, is really the mind behind the corpus. So the KIParla is a large, quite large and modular corpus of spontaneous spoken Italian. It started in 2016 as a collaborative project between Bologna and Turin, and it is really not meant to have an end ever, because it's meant as a reference corpus, and it's currently composed of 6 released modules for a total of 350 hours and about 3 million tokens. And they include a wide range of settings, conversation-wise, and a rich set of metadata, both at the speaker level and at conversation level, that enables sociolinguistic and cross-context analysis. And when we started this process, so the original dataset was only available on an internal server and queryable through no sketch engine. And now, through this reuse practice that we are presenting, it's also available on CLARIN and on GitHub. So what does it look like for those of you who are not familiar with conversational corpora? Most of all, what you would see if you looked into the KIParla a few months ago is basically an XML, which is interpretable through ELAN, a pretty standard software for this kind of data, with one tier of transcription for each participant to the conversation, and then a number of linearized versions were derived for linguists to inspect the full conversation. This was great for those purposes. And the ELAN format is very expressive in terms of conversation, but very opaque in terms of reuse and automated processing, NLP downstream tasks, and version control. So the original pipeline that was followed for creating the corpus and that is still followed is many people doing the transcription. Then one reference ELAN file for each conversation is stabilized, and a number of ad hoc artifacts are exported from it. What we were working on is transitioning from this model to what we called a pivot-based model. So we introduced this format, which now sits at the center of the architecture and is really the core of the new maintenance practices. And all the derived artifacts can now be derived from the pivot format, and edits that happen in downstream formats can be propagated deterministically to the pivot. This is actually very trivial. We didn't invent anything crazy. What we are calling pivot format is really just a verticalized, pseudo-tokenized version of the corpus. Sorry, the screenshot is small, but of course you can access the data on the platform that I mentioned to have a look. This very trivial step allowed us to do a lot of things and to reuse this data in a lot of ways, because for start, it allowed us to actually validate the transcription because data is now fully machine readable. It allows co-readability by humans and machines, so we are able to do some semi-automatic steps along with manual inspection of the data. And as I was mentioning, everything is round-trip stable, so we can go back and forth from the XML to this and to CoNLU and other formats to this. Another step further that we took is adding continuous integration to the maintenance of our corpus. because this pivot format is now specifically suitable for diff-based versioning. And so we can localize all the corrections that are due, revert them, audit who is doing which correction, and reconstruct the corpus history, and automatically validate the well-formedness of the format at each step. And as the initial question was about reuse, we actually introduced this to start a number of reuses and extensions of the KIParla corpus. So we are now lemmatizing it and post-tagging it, and also adding syntactic annotation, which would have been very, very hard to do in the original ELAN interface. So to wrap up, of course, this was just like a very, very brief introduction, but our take-home message and what we learned from our experience, and we think it's important to bring to this cafe, is that spoken resources especially need formats that enable version control and diff-based inspection, that allow to add as many layers of annotation as possible, and that can be co-readable by both humans and machines. Because also, as the last presentation was saying, interoperability and open data is, yes, about formats, but also about the alignment of curational practices and standards to work with data. And that's all from us. Thank you.